This is a completely different case for influencer marketing than the 1,000 other videos you've seen on YouTube about the topic. I'm gonna break down exactly how my brother and I sold $100 million worth of silicone rings in 4 years, turning influencer marketing not into a channel, but into an engine for the whole business. We got the product onto some of the most famous athletes in the world as we would laser engrave their kids' initials into it. We would design things for them. We would build these amazing boxes. There's a classic story about a swimsuit brand that did this around all of Kylie Jenner's friends. It was like, instead of sending to Kylie Jenner swimsuits, you send it to all of her friends that are less famous, and now all of a sudden she wants it. There are multiple brands that I know right now that spend up into the 6-figure range for creative content production. And they could replace the entire thing in a much more authentic fashion by implementing a system. Today's episode of Sharpen Your Skills is brought to you by our partners at FERMÁT and Mercury, two incredible contributors to our ecosystem. This wouldn't be possible without them. Influencer marketing is not a channel. It's the engine of growth for your entire business. My brother and I sold $100 million in silicone wedding rings using this strategy that I'm gonna show and break down for you right now.
Sounds like a pretty guru claim.
Yeah, it is a little guru, the 100 million, don't get me wrong. I'm not afraid to throw a Shopify screenshot up every now and again, but the reality is it's true. And today in e-commerce, what I'm seeing more than ever before is that brands are desperate for creating alternative mediums for driving demand and word of mouth to get outside of the meta cycle, the meta hamster wheel that they're on. And I still believe that this is one of the best mechanisms for doing it, but you can't act as if it's just a channel inside of your business. So that's gonna be the theme of this. We're gonna say that influencer marketing, is not a channel, okay? I see a lot of people treat it as they have an influencer marketing team. They're trying to drive a certain number of impressions, and they think of it like a channel like Meta, like TikTok or Snapchat or anything else. No, this is an engine for growth for the entire business. So I'm gonna break this down for you exactly how this happens. So this is gonna be a little bit of a hack here. So it's gonna be like my rocket engine, what you're gonna see here. Look at this rocket engine. Boom. You get some flames going here, Mickey. Look at these flames.
Most of the pyramids we do are the other way around.
Yeah, I know. This is closer to a funnel, right? It's not a pyramid. But there are different layers to this strategy that are really important to consider, and it's all built around authority and trust. So when I think about channels, what I actually think about is points of distribution, right? And so if we think about our website, okay, and the demand that comes from it existing in two areas. We've got paid demand, right? And then we've got sort of organic demand, okay? Then we've got retail as a channel, right? And then you might have like a B2B channel where you're selling to government suppliers or things like that. And what I want to illustrate to you is that influencer marketing is actually a mechanism to affect anywhere that you're trying to sell product. Because influence is a thing that happens to all of us. We're all influenced by someone. And so the reality is, in every case, we're using this idea of influencer marketing to understand who is the customer I'm trying to sell to, whether that's the buyer at Target or an individual end user, and who holds influence over them, and how can I use this strategy to affect it? So, super important. Now, these 4 portions of any influencer marketing strategy are all going to vary depending on the attributes of your business. Now, I know at Kalo, silicone wedding rings, the beautiful thing about it was they cost nothing to manufacture. So sending out millions of them was not an expensive endeavor. And I recognize that not every business is like that, but we're gonna talk about ways that you can get around that. So at the foundation of this strategy, of any influencer marketing strategy, is seeding. So hence the title, 1,000 seeds turning into $100 million. The idea is that you need to get your product into the hands of the people who hold influence over your customer, okay? Creating for your audience's audience. And seeding is a practice that exists to affect every one of these mediums. Now, what are we seeding? We're obviously in most cases seeding the product, but not the product by itself. So often what we're doing is just thinking, oh, I'm gonna send a polybag t-shirt to someone and create a meaningful experience. And the reality is it takes more than that. It takes thoughtfulness. But I'm gonna talk about what we're trying to accomplish with seeding in each of these areas. But seeding is ultimately the foundation of almost every great influencer program. If it's not a part of what you're doing, it needs to be. So let's talk about how we're using it to leverage in each of these areas. First, paid media. This, for many brands, is the primary point of growth for e-commerce businesses in 2025. The bulk of their revenue realization is still coming from paid media. So I want to think about how seeding affects my paid media. Well, this is all about using paid for asset generation, okay? When I think about what I'm trying to target, there's always the who and the what, right? So the who in this case is going to be creators. These are not people that I care about distribution. The goal is asset generation, not distribution. So the person that you're looking for here are people who know how to create an ad on camera. They know how to tell a story. And this could be your customers, right? So this could literally be what we call CGC, sending product and reward to a customer in exchange for an asset. It could be social influencers and creators. They're definitely a strategy for part of this, but customers are part of it. And then content creators are a distinct crowd from people with audience. I don't actually care about their audience at all. I'm not gonna pay to try and access it. I am just simply sending product to people who create it, and I'm actually gonna do it asking for nothing. And this is the key with seeding. Seeding is all about no expectations, no obligations.
Also, giving with an expectation isn't giving.
That's right. So we used to call this, Jordan Palmer, who was my co-founder here at CTC, played in the NFL for 8 years, played alongside some of the most famous people in the world, and would talk about how he saw brands enter into conversations and dialogues with these really famous people. And he would always say, the best case scenario is you start palms down. You just give. You create an experience that's memorable for them. And that's what we're talking about with seeding. We're not talking about asking for anything. We're saying, hey, we think you're awesome. You align with our brand. We wanted to gift you this product and get your experience and feedback on it. And what happens is when you do that, people feel gratitude. In exchange for gratitude, they create for you on your behalf. And so by doing this, you're going to create a pipeline for content that's going to fuel paid media. And so the engine begins to fuel your primary growth channel is you get assets that have high levels of authority because these are real users of your product. This is not paid promotion. These are people who genuinely use and like the product.
Yeah. You're saying it's not about distribution.
Well, I'm saying it's about more than just distribution because we're going to get to in a second how we think about accessing audience, but that's not what we're trying to do here. And I think that if you isolate the use of influencer marketing to access to audience or distribution, you miss a bunch of additional sectors that we're going to talk about. So in this case, we're talking about using seeding for the sake of generating content to build a pipeline to run ads. That's like a huge portion of what you should be doing is that creative volume, we're going to talk about that in one of our other videos here, is a critical part of developing a successful paid media, and you want a pipeline of constant inflow of assets that you can use to fuel your paid media. And that can come from this seeding mechanism. But again, the goal here is not audience access. The goal here is asset generation. And the best way to do this, I'm gonna tell you right now, is to actually think about the experience that you're creating on behalf of all the people that you're sending it to. So in every one of these cases, we want to think about experience. Now, again, we should always be thinking about this with our brand, but I'm gonna tell you what I mean. So Kalo, when you ship a little ring in a bag, it is not a very exciting experience to receive that in the mail.
Especially next to what a typical wedding ring looks like.
That's right. It comes in an envelope and a poly bag, a little plastic bag, and it's got a silly. If I just sent that to your house, if I just sent that to your house with no context, it would be a very underwhelming experience, and certainly not something that you'd be excited to share on your social media.
Or to give to your wife, or to give to your man.
That's right. So you know what we did in light of that is we thought, well, what does the ring represent? Well, the ring is a representative of marriage, your most important relationship. And so what we would do is we would send what we would call date night kits. So you'd get rings for both spouses, husband and wife. So you'd get rings, you'd get a gift card to a local restaurant. So we would type in your shipping address. We would look for the best rated date night restaurants in the area, get a $25 gift card, throw it in there, include that, some thoughtfulness, and say, hey, your next date's on us. Enjoy the rings, love Kalo.
Yeah.
Okay. A very simple activation that takes it from a envelope with a poly bag and a thing like, what is this, to, hey, we care about you. We're not asking for anything in return. We're going to create an experience.
And the cost profile of that is also way easier than paying somebody $200.
That's right. And what you see is you develop relationships. You begin, and they feel like, now I'd love to do something for you because you were thoughtful and considerate of me first. Like reciprocity is a real thing that people want to offer when you're considerate. If you just ship boxes to people's houses, then sure, like that's not very compelling. But okay, so paid media generation. But that's also not the only thing we care about. We do care about organic being, I want people to post on their social to access audience, right? So this is audience, is what I'm trying to get after here. I want you to share your product with your community so that I can spread the product outwards, okay? But it's not just audience. The other thing you're trying to do here is word of mouth, okay? So this is not just about thinking about accessing social audience, okay? This is thinking about what I call IRL audience too. So when you think about what you're trying to accomplish by picking these people, they hold influence in a community. That could be a digital community. As an example, we used to pick for a baseball equipment brand, we would find these, there was these Facebook community groups that were run by moms of little leaguers.
Facebook moms.
And you know who is in IRL, in that case it's digital influencer that holds authority. It's the moderator of that group, right? So I'm gonna send the moderator of that group a product, not because I'm gonna pay her anything, just because I recognize that that person holds influence over a community somewhere.
You can also get product feedback. It's more than just distribution.
That's right. And so I'm understanding, okay, maybe I want to access your digital audience. That's like the lowest hanging fruit here, is that so often we're just like, oh, you have 27,000 followers. But I'll tell you, it's the cheapest version. An Instagram stories post or an IG feed post is such a commodity. It's gone so fast that it's like the lowest value access point for entering into community and relationship. Better is physical, right? Like, so Kalo also benefited from the fact that if we got the product onto you, we benefited from you being existing in the world and people seeing it. Yeah. So if you sell footwear or things like that, you're going to benefit from that. If you sell sheets, it's a little harder. People don't have a ton of humans in their bed, so generally speaking, so it's a little hard. So the other thing I want to just pause right here and say is that, like, for some brands, we were using the example of talking through Peloton yesterday, okay? Well, if you have Peloton, it's really expensive to send your product out, right? So what I've seen people do, I took a picture of this, we'll show it here in a second, is that over Christmas, I saw Peloton created like ornaments of a Peloton. That's a great gift that does a few things. Sends a bunch of people a thoughtful thing at a moment when it's gonna be in their life, to in a public place where people are gonna come through and see it on their Christmas tree.
Unexpected.
Unexpected, right? So it doesn't always have to be the product itself. I'll give you another example we used for Kalo to create this IRL community impact. Was we identified the top 100 CrossFit gyms. So we identified this community, and often influencer seeding works best when you can think about understanding, I'm gonna make a bullseye here, a community that has a center point, that you understand exactly who you're talking to. It allows you to understand the next phases of this way easier. So we identified the top 100 CrossFit gyms in the country, the largest CrossFit gyms with the most members. Okay, and so if I think about that, there's a bunch of things. One is those spaces hold authority in the community. They're thought of as cool, reputable, they have large audiences, people pass through them physically, and the founders and staff of those places are influencers in those communities, right? So we would do a few things. One, we would always send a box to all staff, okay? So everybody there would have a Kalo ring. If they were married, and again, same idea, what's the local restaurant or bar or anything else, so that when we send it to, wherever, Ohio, to send to the CrossFit gym, we're hooking them up with some cool stuff. They feel stoked to get rings. They make sense when you work out and you're getting a gift. And again, we're asking for nothing in return. Yeah. So right away, I have influencers wearing my product in the spaces for the customers that I want to sell, okay?
I think it'd be an interesting exercise too, or just to list it down. Firemen, people in kitchens.
That's right.
People in wood shops.
Right. Well, the sooner you can identify who your customer is, you can ask the question of who influences them. Yeah. Right. And it's actually pretty easy to start to build a roadmap. And the reality is, we're all influenced. We're not just influenced by famous people. Like, that's like such a simple approach to thinking about influencer marketing. The actual question is about influence, not influencer. I think we've subsidized these terms and we've mixed it up. That you're really looking for who holds influence. Rising CAC, tariffs, inflation. Being profitable in e-commerce is hard. That's why managing your finances shouldn't be. Our partner Mercury helps you combine banking, credit, and working capital into one seamless, easy to manage financial system. You get banking with no hidden fees. So important. You get 1.5% cash back on all credit purchases, and you get predictable payback on all of your working capital loans. In addition, you're going to get a beautiful, easy to manage cash in, cash out dashboard to track all of your financial health in one location. And if you sign up now, you're going to be eligible for 2 different rewards. $250 when you deposit $5,000 into your bank in the first 90 days, and another $250 when you spend $5,000 on your credit card in the first 90 days. That's $500 in rewards within 90 days of joining Mercury. Join over 200,000 business owners who trust Mercury to manage their finances. And of course, tell them Taylor sent you. And so let me go back to this example though, because with these gyms, we wouldn't just send them rings, because the rings are kind of small, you don't always get seen. We also created these big, cool banners. They were like 4 foot by 6 foot banners, and they featured, yeah, like look, because in what you notice in CrossFit gyms, they all hung flags. Like they would have, exactly. Yeah. And so, you know what's cool for a CrossFit gym owner is to feel like you're sponsored, to show off as if you like have a relationship with cool brands. And so we sent out 100 banners. We made 100 of these banners, okay? And our goal was, could we get 20 of them to hang these banners so that every time someone walked in, we had free advertising to the customer that we want, okay? So 100 banners, we got like 40 of them to hang them. And so in 40 of the top CrossFit gyms in America, we had a giant advertising all the time. The only brand that did, and every staff member was wearing product. Yeah. And when I think about this, now again, going back to supportive paid, you know what makes your marketing more efficient is that when the Kalo Facebook ad shows up in the feed of a CrossFitter when your banner's hanging in their gym. Yeah. That's actually how you're, exactly. So this seeding is all about being thoughtful around the who holds influence in both in real life and online communities. I'll give you another example of an online community. When we started at Kalo, firefighters were one of the primary communities that we cared about. And so we identified this blog called Firefighter Wife, okay? Firefighter Wife. Again, this might be a blog of 1,000 people. I don't care about 50,000 Instagram followers. It's meaningless to me. Most of them are in other countries where I don't sell the product, or it's men following hot women. Like, it's like, who cares about that? Firefighter Wife has 1,000 firefighter wives that represent the exact customer that I care about. And so you know what we did? Seeded product to her. Made her feel appreciated and say, hey, I know your husband probably has to take his ring off every time he goes to work. Yeah. Not anymore. This matters to you. Boom. Okay, now you build authority in a digital community, organic again, palms down. Right. I
also think we can tie this to something you mentioned earlier about product development. Companies are trying to get into this.
That's
now.
Right.
If you can find a high margin, low cost product that you can send
That's
out.
right. It doesn't even need to be, sometimes the product could exist expressly for the sake of developing seeding, even more than it does for selling. Like, and this could be like I'll give you like in beauty, this could be like minis or sample kits. Right. So where you actually develop it, not because you're going to run it as a Facebook ad or drive it as a big funnel, but because it's going to fuel this engine. And this engine's important. Okay, but it's not even just driving online or digital sales. It's also like thinking about retail. So one of the things I want you to understand is that the buyer of your category at Dick's Sporting Goods gets influenced by people, right? What he or she sees as cool is affected by somebody around him, right? Or her. So when I think about this, one of the things that we would try to do is like if Dick's Sporting Goods is the retailer that I want to get into, okay? So I'm going to look at one, the obvious thing is like, okay, send them products. Cool, but that's like too cliche. Like they know that's gonna be effective. But if I understand who they are, then I can know what podcasts do they listen to, what blogs do they read, do they CrossFit, what gym do they work out at, right? And now I can actually make it so that he is starting to see my product, he or she is starting to see my product in a way where he's already set up for the idea that it's cool and that it's something that I could be interested in. You can literally, this is like, what's the movie with Will Smith? I do this where it's like Focus or whatever. Like
Pursuit of Happiness?
Yeah, no. The one where he's the gambler where it's like you're setting up, you're implanting in people's brains ahead of time the idea that the product matters. And there's a classic story about a swimsuit brand that did this around all of Kylie Jenner's friends. It was like, instead of sending to Kylie Jenner swimsuits, you send it to all of her friends that are less famous, and now all of a sudden she wants it. The same is true of a retail buyer. You can affect them in the exact same way.
Have you seen in Social Network the scene where Sean Parker is with Mark Zuckerberg?
Yep.
And he's talking about Little Bighorn?
Yeah.
And they seeded all the small schools before one of the big schools. It's the same thing.
Tell me about the strategy you're using. Okay. For instance, we wanted Baylor in Texas, but Baylor already had a social network on campus, so instead of going right after them, we made a list of every school within 100 miles.
Put the Facebook on those campuses first.
Pretty soon all the Baylor kids were seeing their friends on our site. We were in.
It's called the Little Bighorn. That's smart, Mark.
Oh, thanks. That was mine.
Easy.
That's right. The same idea. It's thoughtful, intentional placement into sectors of influence. And that's, again, the key idea here. Another one I'll give you as an example is that we wanted to sell directly into the government for first responders. Okay, so in this case, we wanted to be able to sell directly to the city to have them buy equipment for, make Kalo a mandatory part of the equipment, right? So again, what do I do here? Fire chiefs, right? Like I go Every fire chief in a city that I know has a relationship. They're getting an amazing package. We created a thin red line ring. We made products specifically for the sake of getting into them in a way that was special and informative. We would build these awesome packages, and we just want that. We want these people asking their boss all the time, hey, could you guys buy these? Could you get these? We do this right now. Bear from Born Primitive is working on a really cool idea, which is that he wants to create a gym for the LAPD and a locker room that makes it look like Alabama football. Where he's like, we want to build the sickest locker room in the world for the LAPD and have them know that it's Born Primitive.
Yeah.
Right? Again, it's just this idea of like, how do I straight give, nothing back, with the sake of understanding the strategy of where I'm headed. Now, that's just phase one of this program though, right? Because we're not going to stop there. There's actually a lot more to do. But what this is this is progressive, okay? Each person that passes from the levels of this pyramid, they do so on the basis of gathering trust and authenticity, okay? So what happens is when I seed the product, I build relationship with people. So let's say, again, of these, let's use the CrossFit example. Of these CrossFit staff, 40 of them hung the banners. I now have a relationship with them. They authentically care about the brand. They weren't paid to do it. They really like the product. They sent a thank you message. They might have made a video. They did a post. And now we go, okay, I'm moving you to the next tier.
You can still use it as.
That's right. So now I'm going, all right, the second level is what I call pay to play. Okay, so now we're going, oh, all right, you actually genuinely and authentically like what we're doing. Okay, and we're gonna move to now creating a marketing action for the goal of creating immediate revenue. And these are, the key here is these are one-off. So what we would do, okay, is let's say, and they're usually tied to moments. Okay, so I'm now gonna leverage them to generate all of these assets again. So on the day that, let's say, what we would do is like we have a new colorway coming out on February 17th. I'm gonna go to 10 of these people and I'm gonna say, hey, for $500, will you each post, I'm gonna give you the product early, and will you each post on February 5th the announcement of our new product launch to support it? Absolutely no problem. They authentically already love the product. Now you're rewarding them with monetary because you're asking them to do something on your behalf. Or, hey, will you make a video talking about my new XYZ? And you're like, oh, that's really cool. And there's an excited, and there's a mutual exchange of benefit. But again, it's only after they've established that they like the brand and they're authentic, right? We're gonna care about that authenticity. Now their connection to you is gonna deepen even further because now you're paying them. They're excited. They're stoked to be a part of it. And you're leveraging them to drive peaks into these moments. Or, hey, biggest sale of the year, go check out kalo.com right now. They've got an amazing offer. I've been wearing mine for blah, 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 right? We know creative volume is everything, but let me show you a tool that we're using at Common Thread Collective to help our clients produce exponentially more ad creative. It's called FERMÁT. FERMÁT allows you to take the hundreds of ads that you've just developed using CTC's exciting new system and take what is the reality that right now, every one of these ads is probably driving to a single landing page. And so what that means is that, let's say you have 100 ads times one landing page is gonna give you 100 funnels. But let's imagine we could do this in a better way. What if each individual ad was able to drive to not just its own individual landing, but what if you could create 4 variations? And maybe that this one needs its own bundle. Or maybe this one needs a price test between 2 different ads. What if this one needs to have one featuring older people and one featuring younger people? What if every ad you created was able to have its own perfectly designed message and funnel so that you could exponentially increase the amount of funnels? So instead of just one landing page, we went to hundreds, fast, easy, no code, no developer needed. That's what FERMÁT enables. Their tool allows you to quickly, lightning fast, build as many variations of your landing page, and not just landing pages, but full cart and checkout experiences instantaneously. They give you AI recommendations for ideation to go from just having 100 funnels to thousands of funnels instantaneously. Within minutes, you can be testing tons of different variations of their pages to produce the best results and exponentially increase your creative volume. That's the kind of math that Pierre de FERMÁT himself could get behind. Okay, and I just want to throw in one right here that I think is a huge under-tapped resource right now for brands is NIL. So college athletes right now are allowed to receive money in exchange for compensation and marketing. And what I'll tell you is that I'm not talking about SEC football players here. I'm not talking about ACC basketball players. I'm talking about every other sport. The NIL budgets for baseball programs in the Big West or in secondary divisions is tiny. You can get these athletes to make videos, and these are influential people who likely, in some cases, are users of your products, and you can do amazing things if you seed and pay to play in that area. So just set that aside as a note, as a big opportunity. But all right, so we're in the pay to play field. We've now asked them to do a post, to make an ad, and you know what? We find out it worked. We actually get to test the results. We get to see that now not only are they authentic, but they're valuable in that they drive value in excess of their cost. So if they do a post, their audience responds. If they make an ad, it works. You actually get to validate the reality, and then you move them from a one-time pay-to-play into what we would call a team member.
And the customer who sees the ad is seeing the ad from someone who looks like him.
That's right. And not only that, somebody who influences them. So now what you're going to build is you're going to build a team of people. And so these are more long-term commitments. Think of them like you would an employee. These are ambassadors you're going to sign a one-year deal with. We would do things like, okay, 1 year, $20,000, paid quarterly. You owe us 5 posts. We'll tell you when you need to do them. We're going to do a one-day photo shoot, and we're going to make a bunch of ads, whatever it is. You come up with the exchange of value that's worth it to these people. And again, this isn't likely the tier where you're going to get, you know, LeBron James. That's not the point here. But professional CrossFit athletes or firefighter wife or whoever you're going to be proud to put on your website and is going to be a permanent part of the team is super important. Now you're going to use them in all sorts of different ways, right? So now we're going to use them. These people are going to be, there's going to be a photo shoot. We would do cool things where they would be like the voicemail on your customer service line. They show up in point of sale at retail, right? So that goes back to supporting retail, right? They show up in inserts in your packaging. They might be the models for your PDPs, like we've seen. I think Noble did a really good job with this with their fitness athletes, different things. I think Gymshark for a long time built a very large team of athletes that were sponsored. It was cool to be a Gymshark athlete and actually meant something. There was some exchange of funds. And they would have your use of likeness. They're going to provide you, again, they're going to feed this pipeline of constant paid media content in really high quality ways. They're going to support your big brand moments. And this is maybe like, we're talking like, we're whittling down from like, this is 1,000 to maybe this is 50 to this is 5 to 10, right? And so you're going to think about this. It's like a funnel of different layers of participation. And then finally, the last thing is sort of what we would call like the flagship ambassador, right? This is going to be one big person that rises above all of these people. That's going to be likely somebody who holds influence in this large space. Like that, it's going to be somebody that retail cares about that you're going to move. This is Anthony Edwards for Adidas. These are big name programs that drive the most value overall, right? And this is ultimate obligation, ultimate price. So this is like high money, right? High obligation. This is Zendaya for on running. This is the sort of pinnacle of ambassador relationships. And those are going to come with immense amounts of obligation. It should also be coordinated with probably PR and other things, but directly connected to some retail effort, most likely, because that's how you're going to expand and demand those moments. So the point with all of this, though, is that this idea of influencer marketing is so much bigger than what I generally see, which is just this narrow band, which is like, I'm going to send a bunch of product out for the sake of generating as many impressions as I can. And instead, it's so much bigger to stop and ask yourself, okay, what is the business strategy that I'm trying to accomplish? Where is my growth going to come from in the next year? And what do I need in order to accomplish that? And I think the things that people need is they need ads. Okay, brands are so under-resourced in their creative creation, it's unbelievable. But this pipeline of seeding is going to create ads, which is a primary growth driver.
Probably an abundance of ads.
Yes, right. It's going to create distribution, right? So you're going to get access audience, something that we care about, right? It's going to create word of mouth if you do it in cool ways, right? I just saw, again, the idea of I just saw is an example of word of mouth. Yesterday, 8 Sleep launched, they just launched like a sleep supplement that's non-melatonin based. right? So they've gone from selling beds to now sleep supplements. Or like another 8 Sleep example is they just sent a bunch of bed pods to the Doge headquarters for those guys to sleep in. That's using influencer seeding for the sake of PR, right? Which is word of mouth, okay? So word of mouth is a critical component for how does my product show up in moments? I think there's all sorts of ways that there were so many brands that like you could do this charitably when there's issues that arise. If you wanted to provide, sheets to everybody who lost their home in the fires. Like there's all sorts of ways to think about this as showing up, palms down, and being present with your product for the sake of generating influence within a community, right? So this is going to be ads, it's going to be distribution, it's going to be word of mouth. It's going to be brand reinforcement. So the other thing is, I think we often underappreciate is that who you are to people is often determined by who people discover you through, right? So if I think about part of what you're going to learn is that when someone discovers a brand through Peter Attia, okay? I'm a big Peter Attia fan. So what it says to me immediately is that if I discover your product through Peter Attia, I'm going to assign to you the attributes of Peter. Scientific, thoughtful, deeply researched. And so all of a sudden you absorb the attributes of these people. So when you think about your brand identity, so I've been talking about this with Steven at Cuts, they care about their business being the uniform for the sport of business. And I was like, well, then I better discover your product through entrepreneurs. I better discover it on business podcasts. I better discover it in ways that reinforce that brand identity for me. And so influencer marketing, not only does it create demand across every channel of revenue realization, but it also reinforces all these key pillars of what you do. And that's why I go for an e-commerce business with any sort of product cost that is manageable, influencer marketing is the growth engine that I think has the potential to drive the entirety of what you do.
It'd be an interesting thread to see if somebody mapped out what the cost is that people are losing paying 20 grand, 10 grand, even a couple $100 for certain influencers if you just sent the product out to people.
I know there are multiple brands that I know right now that spend high 5 figures up into the 6-figure range for creative content production, and they could replace the entire thing in a much more authentic fashion by implementing a system like this.
A neighborhood of people.
With a neighborhood of people, right? Like you can get away with it being the entirety of your creative production process in many cases if you are as committed. Now the key is like you can't just send people t-shirts and poly bags, right? Like go back to the Kalo Date Night idea. Go look at one of the ways that we got the product onto some of the most famous athletes in the world is we would laser engrave their kids' initials into it. We would design things for them. We would build these amazing boxes, do things that are worth talking about. And the stories will spread and people will feel connected to you. But this engine, man, I tell you what, it's not a channel. Don't treat it as an attempt to go get impressions and treat it as the growth lever for influencing your customer to become part of your community.
Not so guru after all.
Come on.
Doing Monday Night Countdown with the boys. Randy, you've been wearing the Kalo ring for a long time. Why?
Well, because back when I played catching the balls, my fingers stayed swollen. So when I decided to wear a ring, it could not fit over my knuckles. But with this ring right here, anything's possible. I love wearing it.
And you're a workout freak. You're playing golf all the time. Now, that's why I went to it, because golf-wise, I'd go to grip the club, because my old ring always get in the way. This one, I don't have it on.
My problem is really self-explanatory. You see this finger right here kind of curving over the wrong.
Like an S.
Yeah, it ain't supposed to go that way. So my regular ring couldn't fit over this fat knuckle right here, man. This thing here, though,
Yeah, money. And you guys
easy
saw
on, easy off.
You guys saw quarterbacks.
I saw Derek Carr wearing one like during a game. But you can't wear a ring during a game. I didn't know that it was like this rubber thing. I know. I'm like, oh.
I've
actually seen some CrossFitters doing it. I was doing CrossFit. And what I liked about it as a 40-year-old quarterback last year, I put like that, like creams, like icy hot, Ben Gay on my
Everywhere.
muscles, so I don't pull it exactly. And then he just gets it on there. I can get it, and then I just wear it out to practice.
We're obviously all believers.